Hello everyone, we're back with some footage from the Central Park Crit. Despite the misleading name, this is in Denver, Colorado. It was a local weekend crit with a kind of a fun course. You can see in the bottom right. It had these two longer sides and then a series of like 5 or 6 corners all right in a row that made for a more technical section. And this race was pretty aggressive the whole time. We had this team you see in front of me, Cinch, their domestic elite team. They had like 5 guys out. That's my teammate Jabez right in front of him, and the green and black we'll talk about more. Danny Summerhill was out, who their kit looks a lot like ours. They've been out at the USA Crits series as well. You can check out my other video from Salt Lake if you want to see more of that stuff. And then Colby Lang from the action team was here, so those were kind of the big hitters we were looking out for, and our game plan coming in was to make sure we didn't miss any moves that had Colby and Danny together, because Danny was following a lot of Colby's moves, and we did a pretty good job most of the race. This is probably 45 minutes in, and it's still together. That being said, this was a pretty hard race, so there's a lot of times like this where like groups kept getting away, and then like people were looking around. I think this Cinch guy had a teammate in the move, so that's why he's not pulling. But this happened like a ton of times during the race. Like I had to burn a lot of matches throughout the race to like sew back up gaps, despite it just being like 30 people at the local crit. Took a lot more power than I thought it would. So this one comes back together again, like, I don't know, probably at least a dozen, maybe 15 times already in the race. That's Colby going up the right and Danny hot on his wheel there. So that's dangerous. You see the Cinch guys react to that. Since they were the biggest team, the responsibility chase was kind of on them here. But so the two of them got a gap pretty quickly there. And I see this happening. I see Jabez in front of me, but I think we both kind of had the understanding that we would try to let Cinch chase this back since they had a bigger team than we did. But so those Cinch guys there, smart teammate move. They sat up because they already had a teammate across. I should have gone more aggressively into this corner to get in front of that Cinch guy to carry my momentum. But instead I just did like 700 watts out of the corner to try and get across this gap. And so this is like the technical part of the course I mentioned before, so can't exactly make up a ton of ground here, but I'm just trying to get back on terms. You can see like 7 or 8 guys are away now, with pretty good representation from all the teams. I mean, the most important one being Cinch, so that those guys back in the field won't chase us. And I put in a big effort here. So this was like the one part of the course where people were laying down a ton of power. So I knew I was going to have to go pretty hard to get back on terms. And I wanted to do it by the end of this straightaway, which luckily I do. We'll see. I'm coasting right back on through this last corner. I think like as this break was forming, we came through, we saw 5 to go. So it's pretty late move going. So pretty relieved to be here. I kind of initially thought that everyone was here, but I realized this is when I looked back and saw we had a pretty good gap. And so, but I was pretty tired from that move, so game plan was to just sit on the back of this. So I just sped up these few laps of me sitting on the back here. And kind of one thing that happened that I hadn't realized was while I was bridging, Colby and Danny had gotten away. So now there's 2 guys up the road, and we were sprinting for 3rd in our group, which I didn't realize until like the last lap when somebody on the side of the race said something. But so here we are. The Cinch guys were trying to chase mostly. The rest of us were sitting on and everybody seemed to be okay with coming down to a sprint. See, there's one guy who takes like a flyer at 2 to go, but it doesn't amount to like anything. And you can actually see him on the right side of the road here getting brought back into the mix. So this is coming to 1 to go. That was like the first time the pace had slowed down, and then as soon as it did, somebody took another little dig in the front, which was good. I was worried that everyone would start like coasting until we got to those corners, but it did seem like there was enough people taking it aggressively. So that finishing stretch was so long that I knew coming into this I did not want to go through the last corner in first place. I was like okay being a few wheels back. Because I thought it was long enough to come around people, which we'll see I was mistaken about. But anyways, here's another little move. We're going into the corners. Nobody really tried anything through the corners, which I was thankful for. They weren't that hard. Some of them had like little manhole covers in the exits, which could have been sketchy with a big group, but when you're riding single file through it, it's totally fine. And then it fans here for like half a second, and I go to the outside. I kind of wish I'd gone to the inside. I don't know if it made a big difference, but I think I could have carried more speed through that corner, which then would have allowed me to carry more through these next 2 corners. So this is second to last corner, get a few pedal strokes in here, and then coming out of this last corner, this guy goes, and I'm like, I'm going to follow that. And we're just sprinting at this point. I sat down for like half a second there. Probably shouldn't have. We'll look at that after the finish with some slower stuff. But I end up 5th in this group. Ended up 7th in the race, which I was pretty stoked on. But anyways, coming out of the last corner, what I was thinking was this guy in the orange started going, and I was like, I'm going to follow that wheel. So I opened up my sprint, and I thought it was a pretty solid sprint for the end of a race. But after I did that, this rider comes right in front of me, and I'm like, oh, I'll try to follow his wheel back to the right. And you see my power goes down significantly because I sat down for a second to try and follow his wheel. But watching this back, I wish I had just kept my sprint going so I could have had that speed going into the final. I think I could have probably been 3rd in the group sprint if I had done a little better job of that. But oh well, for next time. Still pretty stoked on getting a 7th place in a Pro 1-2 race.